In the last week of April, I started a number of air layers on this large Shishigashira Japanese maple. It's now the middle of July and 10 weeks have passed, and it's time to take a look at these to see how we're getting on. Keep watching to see if we've had any success. I bought this Shishigashira Japanese Maple from my local garden centre with the express intention of using it to create air layers. So I started about 8 air layers on this tree. Sadly, 2 of those died off and dried out above where the air layer was, and so I've lost those. However, you can see these ones that are remaining, and so I'm going to take these bags off to reveal the moss underneath and to see whether or not they've rooted into that moss. Just before we get started and I show you whether we've had any success or not, I'd like to just recap what air layering is about. Air layering is a propagation technique used in bonsai and horticulture to encourage the growth of roots on a tree branch or a trunk whilst it's still attached to the parent plant. The purpose is to create a new independent tree at that point with its own root system, allowing for easy cloning of desirable varieties. It's a way of turning one tree into many. How air layering works. Air layering exploits the tree's natural ability to produce roots along its trunk when conditions are favourable. In air layering, the cambium layer plays a crucial role in the process of root formation. The cambium is a thin green layer of actively dividing cells located just beneath the bark of a tree. When a ring of bark is removed during air layering, the cambium layer is also disrupted. The cambium cells, deprived of their usual flow of nutrients and hormones, undergo a series of physiological changes. These changes include an increase in cell division and the differentiation of cells into root primordia, which eventually develop into new roots. Meanwhile, the upper portion of the stem continues to receive nutrients and water from the parent plant, allowing it to remain healthy until it can be separated and planted as a new independent tree. Think of it as a two-way process. The water and nutrients the tree needs are flowing up the tree, and the energy and hormones generated by the leaves are flowing down. When we interrupt the downward flow by removing the cambium, the accumulated energy at the cut site promotes the emergency growth of new roots. Once these have developed sufficiently, the air layer can be separated from the parent tree and become an independent tree in its own right. So I've already been through the process of selecting the trunks that I want, of ring barking those, putting some rooting hormone on, and then covering them in some kind of rooting medium, i.e. moss, and bagging those up. It's now time to take a look and see how that's getting on. So here we go with the first bag. I secured these with a bit of wire, so I'm just removing the wire. And there's a black bag holding that moss in place. Now what we're hoping for is lots of roots on here, so that this upper portion can be separated from the main tree and can be grown as an independent tree. So just being very careful not to disturb that too much. What we don't want to do is to damage any roots which started growing on here. So here we go. Here's the reveal, and I can see on here we have got a nice set of roots growing on there. So this is the very first of the air layers, and you can see clearly we've had some success there, and there's a mass of new white roots. So I think I can safely separate this part from the tree. But this is just one part of many. Let's have a look at the other air layers. Here's the second one, and I'm just loosening the wire so I can get into the bag and take a look. And here's the moment of truth. And again, you can see we appear to have masses of root on the base here. So I think we can separate this portion of the tree again to grow as an independent plant. So based on the success we've had elsewhere, I'm hoping that we're going to find lots of nice roots in here too. And I can see roots there. Lots of lovely white roots. Now these are very delicate and I have to be careful not to knock those off and damage them. But that looks like another success. Let's just cover that up briefly whilst I look at this other one next to it. This is possibly the smallest of the bags of moss that are on here. And here we go, moment of truth. And I can already see there are some roots in here. And there is a mass of roots. And this is possibly one of the most successful air layering exercises that I've undertaken. And I'm really quite pleased. So there is just one more around the back here, and I lost part of the top of the tree here. I do still have leaves just above the air layer site, so there's no reason why that can't be a viable tree. So let's get into this final bag and take a look. And here we go, moment of truth. And I'm not seeing any roots on this one. Perhaps because, there are some roots just round the back. But I think perhaps because there is less foliage up above to drive the energy down, then perhaps there aren't as many roots in here, but there are definitely roots emerging at the back there. So given that we've got roots on all of these moss balls now, what I need to do is delicately remove each of these plants just below the root ball and then get those planted up into baskets. The plan now then is to remove them and get them into these pond baskets with some bonsai soil to aerate and help develop the roots. I now need to delicately remove each of these just below the root ball, obviously trying to avoid causing any damage to the new roots. So that's one. It's worth mentioning that even once I've taken all of these off, what I've got left is this thick trunk, which I can then develop into a nice tree, although it has got a visible graft here. And this is the last one. And there we go. I'm just going to add a bit of wire to these baskets to try and keep the trees stabilized whilst the roots are developing. Because they're quite fine and delicate at the moment, there is the danger that they could be damaged if the trees move about in the pots too much. I'm just adding bonsai soil into the bottom here, and it's just a nice free draining mix that will encourage the roots to grow and develop. And then I just want to try and steady the tree in the pot. To give those roots an opportunity to develop. Now they're a little bit delicate, so I don't want to be trying to rake them out too much at this stage, because there's the danger I will just shear them straight off, which will obviously be no good for the tree. So let's just hold the tree steady, and I'm just going to top the pot up with bonsai soil. And this is just any free draining bonsai soil mix. The key is lots of good drainage, lots of good aeration, and that will help those roots to develop further. And that tree will just get popped on one side to develop for the next several months. The plan is to give a couple of these away to other bonsai YouTubers. And the fact is I lost a couple, so that's a couple less that I have to give away, which is a shame. But my plan is still to give these away. So this was the one with the least amount of root on it. Now there is still some root on there, and reduce the foliage on there to give that every chance of surviving, and we'll see how that gets on. It's possible this one might not make it. So I'm just using these wires to just gently support the tree in the middle of this basket. And that's really just to hold that steady whilst those roots get settled and develop. And that now just needs to go into a corner where it won't get disturbed. So that tree is not going to rock about too much in the basket, which is going to give the roots every opportunity to develop and get established in the basket. And we're now down to our final tree. So I'm really quite pleased with how that's gone. We've got 5 successful air layers that have come off that parent tree. Plus we've obviously got the parent tree still for future development. The plan now is to just leave these in a quiet corner of the garden, let those roots progress and develop. And then at some point I will be giving these away. Well, I'd consider that a success. What do you think? If you found that useful or interesting, then please subscribe, and subscribe to see how these plants will develop in the future. Also, I've got a hawthorn which is currently air layering, which I'm going to look at shortly, so keep posted to see that. Thanks for watching. Can't see it because the bag's in the way. I can see it now.